Hi everyone! So today I thought I'd give you another GM diary. So today I want to talk a little bit about when to kind of speed through things and when to take your time. Not this last session that I ran, but the session before, we had a couple of situations where I kind of sped through, and we had one where I decided not to speed through. The situation that I ended up speeding through was the players had an encounter with some undead, and a couple of the undead had run off thanks to Cleric using Turn Undead, and they had finished taking care of the bulk of the undead, but there were still these, I think there were two skeletal fighters that hadn't been taken care of, and most of the party decided to take a short rest because they needed the hit points. But two of the more combat-oriented folks decided to go after the skeletal figures. And usually I like to have map drawn out, minis, everything. But because I kind of hadn't anticipated on having some of them go off and get kind of locked in a room, I hadn't planned all out that room necessarily. So instead of having the map and the minis, I just described it. I switched to doing Theater of the Mind, and we went through a really fast combat round, just kind of speeding through it, because I knew with the two of these characters, unless they rolled just completely horrible rolls, they were going to be able to get rid of these skeletons, because I think even one of them had been hit by an area of effect spell, so it was like at half hit points already. You know, that was something that the other characters weren't missing out story. Because it was a fairly simple combat, it was easy to breeze through. I didn't want to waste time on that. Now, the thing that I spent a lot more time on was the kind of final boss battle. There wasn't really a big boss. I had a couple of things in the room, but the party took care of them a lot faster than I anticipated. I probably could have actually thrown in a couple of more mummies, but I didn't. I knew they had a couple of encounters leading up to it, and I think I just got my math a little off. But what they did decide to do was they've been trying to figure out what these rituals are that they keep running across and keep disrupting, that are, when they disrupt it, it returns magic to the world. So our bard decided, I'm going to cast Identify on one of the figures that's part of the ritual, because it would tell her what spells were affecting that individual. It was a great idea. I had not planned for it at all. So as soon as she said that, I was like, well shit, now I have to figure out what spells are part of this ritual. Because it was kind of something I had made up out of a conglomeration of a bunch of different spells, but hadn't sat down to write it all down yet. Because of the ritual being disturbed, there was essentially a lair action for this ritual, where that at the start of every round, there was a magic surge. I've put together my own magic surge table, taking from the wild magic. The warlock, I want to say, is the one that has the wild magic table. I changed some of them because some of them didn't make sense as kind of an area effect. So I changed it. So she cast the spell, and by the second round, I think, all of the monsters, well, except for one that they didn't actually find till later, had been destroyed. There was a mimic hiding, and it was waiting for somebody to come open it because it was a chest. It was fun. I decided to keep them in combat through the entire time that this spell was going on, because the spell took a minute, so that was 10 rounds. And if something happened, she got pulled away from, you know, keeping her hand on this figure, or her concentration got broken, it wouldn't go off. So we had this great, super intense, with like hardly any combat round. Because every round I rolled a D100 to figure out what it was that happened. The first thing that happened was lightning kind of radiated out, and everybody got hit with lightning damage. Confusion got cast on several of the party members, including the bard, but she was able, when she rolled to see how the confusion affected her, she just stayed where she was. So I played that as, you don't know exactly what's going on, but you know you need to hold on to this person and keep doing what you're doing. And she was able to break the concentration eventually. On top of the concentration, or the confusion, a couple of the party members got polymorphed into sheep because they did not succeed on the saving throw. So we had confused sheep running around, and our paladin picked up one of them and like started carrying him down the stairs because he was afraid that the sheep was going to like disrupt something or like run into the like magic barrier that was up, that the last time they saw something that got thrown into it, it got burnt to a crisp. It was so intense. Everybody, as we went around, I asked everybody what they were doing, and they were just like, I'm holding action until something happens, or I need to defend Kara, who is our bard. And it was so good. By the time when we finally reached that 10th round, people like were yelling and jumping up and down just because it had built up that tension so much. And I've never had combat that has had that much tension to it. Going through each round went fairly quickly because most rounds they were just kind of everybody was holding action, so we could kind of just go around like holding action, still concentrating, holding action. Okay, on to the next round. It's sometimes hard to tell when you should speed through and when to play it out. I'm still definitely figuring that out. But some of it, I think a lot of it is reading your players and figuring out what are the things that your players are really interested in doing. Do your players want to actually sit down and role play, shopping and doing all of that stuff? Then yeah, spend the time on that. If they just want to go buy a new magic weapon so they can go back out and do combat or go exploring, maybe that's something that you can speed through to get to the part that your players really enjoy. And then I think it's also a bit of helping balance the flow of the session. If people seem to, even if it's something they enjoy, if they start to seem like they're wandering or stuff like that, you know, maybe speeding things up and having an NPC that comes up and is like, hey, we have to get going right now, or finding ways to push your players along a little bit, have an exterior force that's pushing them along. And in our last session that happened this Saturday, one of my players decided that she wanted to go down to the library and read up on a bunch of cities and locations that they had heard about that they think have a tie-in to what is going on. And instead of sitting there and telling her everything in session, I decided this is something I'm going to blue book. I don't know if everybody else uses this term, but I've always used the term, and I've heard it from a couple of other GMs, of blue booking is where you do stuff out of session. So sending an email, sending a text message, or just having a conversation without the whole group. So I'm doing this with her where I'm going to write up kind of the summary of what she finds and send it to her, and then she can in character share that information. I also did this a little bit. I had a letter that I was able to hand them that she was able to read out to the group. So that was fun, adding a little prop in there. But I like doing blue booking for more individual character growth, kind of like how Matt Mercer has been having everybody get up from the table in the second campaign for these little like excerpts with the characters like Ford and Caleb and all of them. One, it's nice, it helps speed things along so that you're not spending too much time in session on something that maybe only one person is really interested in and the rest of the table is kind of sitting there a little bored. And also you can take your time with it when you're not in session, so you're not sitting there being like, I have to go, we have all these other things going on. You can give them a lot of information. This is also nice if your characters are leveling up and you want to try and work in a little bit of story with it. Or I've also had it used, the other GMs have had me do a blue book when it's like, hey, we're going to be getting ready to go out on an expedition. We're going to blue book all of the shopping elements of buying stuff and finding things so that you can do all of that. But again, if that's not something that your group enjoys role-playing, you can speed through to get to the parts that you do enjoy. So what are the things you tend to rush through, and what are the things you tend to take your time on when you're running games? Is there a hard and fast rule, or do you play it by ear, by how your players are reacting? Let's talk about it down below in the comments. Also, I'm curious to know if you've ever had like any really intense kind of combat sessions that didn't really involve combat. I was not expecting this, but it was definitely a really fun session, and I think I might try and see some ways to involve this again. Maybe traps or puzzle things like that have some kind of time element to it. I think it really added time element, I think, and the having to get to those 10 rounds really added a sense of urgency, as well as the suspense of, are we actually going to make it, or are we going to make it to 8 rounds and then have to start all over again? So let's talk about it down below. Want to give a special thanks to all of our patrons over at patreon.com/roll4initiative, especially Sean, Joan, Arvi, and Lainey. If you're interested in becoming one of our patrons, you can go check it out and see what kind of perks you want. Don't forget to like and share and subscribe so you don't miss any videos. We do make them every Tuesday and Thursday, but if you subscribe, they'll be right in your subscription box, so it's super easy. All right, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Roll for Initiative. Bye!